Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We'll continue our conversation now on the economy. And I still have Mr. Muda Yusuf, the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, here with me in the studio. Mr. Yusuf, thank you so much for staying around. So let's take off from where we left off. We're talking about the debt. Now, the debt to GDP ratio is about 30 to 40%, which isn't so bad. So looking at it like that, is it wise for managers of the economy to contemplate borrowing to drive the economy?
Yes, the threshold normally globally is between 30 to 40% debt to GDP ratio. The actual for us is actually around 23%. So we still have a headroom, to borrow more. But some of us have very serious concern with the use of that ratio assessment, the ratio analysis of assessing whether we have the capacity to borrow more. We just reviewed the structure of the budget. In the 2015 budget, provision for debt service is 943 billion. That's close to $1 trillion. In this same budget, the provision for infrastructure is 93 billion. You can see the gap. So there's a major issue even in the allocation of resources. You should look at it from that perspective. And the revenue outlay is about 3.6 trillion. So if you have a revenue outlay of 3.6 trillion, and you are spending 943 billion to service debt, then something must be wrong. So in looking at debt, we should look at the capacity to service the debt, not to be relating the debt to GDP. Because the use of GDP presupposes that you have a GDP that has the capacity to generate the revenue to service the debt. That is the logic of relating the GDP to the debt. But in this economy, if you look at the components of the GDP, the main one that has serious impact on revenue is oil. Agriculture is accounting for about 22% of GDP. It's a major component of the GDP. How much revenue are we getting from agriculture? Virtually nil. Is it this peasant farmer that will go and tax and get revenue from them?
But the Ministry of Agriculture has really tried in terms of ensuring that we have mechanized farming.
Yes, but the margin in agriculture is so thin. You can't compare the margin in agriculture with the margin in telecoms, for instance, or the margin in oil and gas, or the margin in construction, or the margin even in entertainment, or services. So that is a major issue. So the revenue base to support the payment of the debt is not there. At the time when we thought we had a very serious debt crisis in 2004, the total debt at that time was $46 billion or $47 billion. Today, the total debt is $69 billion. So if you have a situation where the debt service is accounting for almost a quarter of your revenue, that's a very big problem.
Let's talk about one of the aspects where the federal government intends to build revenue from taxes. So do we expect to see more private sector, operators pay more taxes this year? Because the federal government has said they're going to have taxes on luxury items and some certain goods and services as well.
You see, the capacity of the private sector to pay tax is a function of the well-being of the private sector. It's like a farmer that's into this dairy business. If you want to milk a cow, the amount of milk you get from the cow is a function of how robust the cow is. If you have a cow that is malnourished, there's no way you can get good milk from the cow. So if you have a private sector that is not well taken care of, that is spending almost 30% of its expenditure to be generating power, and you're expecting that you're going to get revenue from them, it will not happen. So it's a function of the productivity of the private sector itself. That is why we keep saying that if you are committed to diversifying the economy, you should invest in making the environment more conducive. That is the starting point. So that you don't have a situation, you walk into a typical manufacturing firm today. You begin to wonder whether it's a power generating firm or it's a manufacturing firm. because we dissipate so much energy and so much resources into power generation. You know, so, well, the private sector will pay tax. The private sector has been paying tax. The way to improve on the tax revenue, I mean, I think we can improve on the efficiency of the collection. I think that is a big issue. But in terms of the capacity to get more money, it's a function of how robust the private sector itself is. So we need to concentrate on building the capacity of the private sector by creating the right kind of environment, by creating the right kind of institutions, by making sure that we don't have situations where the economy is flooded by imported products that people can produce here. You know, these are the things that we need to look at.
Okay,
so to make the private sector also, you know, come forward with increased tax revenue.
Well, Mr. Muda, just before we wrap up this conversation,
yes,
I would not let you go without asking you what your expectations are from the Monetary Policy Committee's meeting, which ends today. The pronouncement will be coming up later on in the day. And organized private sector, I'm sure, is really, really listening out for it. But what are your expectations?
Well, I think we are already almost at the limit of policy tightening. I mean, the CBN has been tightening monetary policy, and they're almost at the limit. So I don't see anything changing significantly. Interest rate is already up there. CRR, the banks have been squeezed almost to the limit. So I don't see anything, you know, I don't see any significant change, because the conditions that led to the tightening up to this point, those conditions have not changed. So I don't see the CBN relaxing its tightening position on monetary policy. And again, I don't think it would be wise at this time to further tightening, because the pressures that are coming from existing policies on the foreign exchange, the devaluation and the depreciation of the currency is already enough burden for the economy and for business. So we will not want the CBN to go and compound that by further raising interest rates. So I expect the CBN at least to, as much as possible, leave things the way they are, so that we can continue to cope with the challenges of the moment.
I'm very sure we'll get to know if the CBN decides to leave things the way they are. But thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf, for coming on the program. It's been an interesting conversation.
Thank you very much.
Well, I've been talking to the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Muda Yusuf, and we've been taking a look at issues in the economy. Of course, he expects that the Monetary Policy Committee at the end of its meeting will leave rates unchanged, because the economy is already tight as it is, and so everything should be done in the best interest of the nation, that's the economy at large, and of course it should be done in the best interest of the economy. Let me just leave it at that. Well, that's the program for today. Thank you for watching. Of course, you know you can watch the episode on youtube.com/channelsweb/videos if you missed out on it. And don't forget to drop a comment. But that's the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Harriet Agbinyi.